Welcome everyone. My name is Gavin MacLeod. I'm Lead Product Marketing Manager for Generative AI and Agentic AI at Coveo. And welcome to Agentic AI Masterclass Part 2, where we're going to focus on open protocols, practical use cases, and show you some live demos. Alongside me are Vincent, Director of R&D, and LG, Senior 2 Solutions Architect, both from our R&D Labs team, our resident AI agent whisperers. In this masterclass, you'll learn how to turn theory into functioning retrieval-grounded agents. We'll spend the first half grounding concepts and the second half building. We'll talk a bit about why there's so much hype around agentic, do a very quick recap on the foundation of what agentic is and what it takes to get it working in an enterprise. Then we'll dive into the technical details of how to build a retrieval-grounded agent. The highlight is going to be a live demo, so be sure to stick around for that, and we'll wrap with some final thoughts and key takeaways. So let's jump in. We're all here today because we know agentic AI is the next breakthrough capability that will soon be a competitive necessity. And analysts like Forrester agree. Picture the moment cloud or smartphones first hit the market. This is that moment for agentic AI, and the possibilities are absolutely thrilling. Organizational leaders aren't waiting. 94% of executives expect to roll out agentic AI faster than they did Gen AI, and that's because the foundation has been set. 96% of executives are expanding agentic AI deployments this year, with 83% seeing this new technology as critical to being competitive. Analysts peg the upside as high as $4 trillion in annual value, and the executive teams are expecting an average ROI of 171%. Significant. In short, the hype has turned into a line item in the strategic plans of major enterprises, and leaders expect measurable returns, not just cool prototypes. So keep those stakes in mind as we dive into what it really takes to make AI agents enterprise ready for tangible ROI. But maybe I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit. First, let's step back and define exactly what we mean by agentic AI or AI agent. An AI agent is a system that can perceive, it can reason, it can act, and it can learn in a loop to complete tasks for users. So let's anchor ourselves in that four-step DNA. It perceives the user need, it reasons about the goal, it acts by calling tools, and it learns from the outcomes. In order to do this, it needs a brain, usually an LLM, short and long-term memory for context, and tools that enable actions such as search, retrieval, posting messages, writing articles, creating a case, purchasing something, you name it. In other words, where basic RAG may answer a single question based off a single retrieval action, an agent will treat each user interaction as a mission. It remembers, chooses tools, and iterates. Crucially, both need quality data to ground their answers. But the agent, with its ability to reason, build its own plan, and invoke multiple tools or actions to complete its objective, relies even more heavily on the data it retrieves across multiple stages. Poor data retrieval could lead to poor decision-making and undesired actions. As a best practice, AI agents specialize in a specific tool set. This makes them easier for people and other agentic AI orchestrators to call upon them while providing a set of guardrails for each agent that is easier to manage. As a result, it's likely that the enterprise will see a host of AI agents in their ecosystem, from coding and research agents to customer support, knowledge management, content creation, sales enablement, merchandising, and so many more. Most, or perhaps all of them, will require access to reliable knowledge to perform at an enterprise level. So before we talk about solutions, we must first caution you and ask, is this a problem in search of a solution or a solution in search of a problem? Leaders are telling their teams to find and build agentic solutions, but they don't necessarily know what the problem is they're trying to solve yet. This is a common theme right now that we're actively guiding our customers through, and it starts with a firm understanding of your needs, your challenges, and your objectives. What types of solutions will directly relieve your pains and deliver the gains you're after? Next, we will help determine just how complex the AI agent should be based on your problem, while also being mindful of your organizational readiness. We don't need to build a rocket ship to deliver a sandwich or use a fire hose to water a houseplant. We want whatever we build to deliver measurable impact and ROI, while also future-proofing you for further agentic advancement or multi-agent orchestration. But here's the reality. Most organizations aren't ready. We're in the middle of a global AI race. Everyone is experimenting, everyone is investing, but very few are actually delivering value at scale. Why? Because custom AI builds are taking too long, costing too much, and often hitting roadblocks like hallucinations, bad data, security concerns, and governance issues. And at the same time, the pressure is on. Investors, boards, executives, they're asking the same question. When is this going to pay off? The gap between leaders and laggards, it's widening. And according to Gartner, nearly 60% of CIOs list hallucination as their top concern. It's followed closely by security threats, privacy risks, and IP protection. These aren't just tech problems. These are business problems that can lead to things like lawsuits, customer churn, and brand damage. And here's the tough part. Gen AI and Agentic AI is no longer optional. The companies that get this right will lead, and the ones that don't may fall behind. So what's holding us back? Search is still a blocker, and Gartner agrees. They now call enterprise search the critical foundation for AI agents. But most organizations are failing to ground agents properly because of three core issues: siloed indices or data stores, duplicate search engines, or broken, missing, siloed, and difficult to manage access controls. So what is Gartner telling their clients to do? Well, it's four things. One is make search the permission-aware retrieval backbone for every assistant and agent. No more shortcuts. Two, rethink search. It's not just the UI anymore. It's an engine powering all Gen AI experiences. And three, tune the search touchpoints you already own, make them smarter and more relevant, not just prettier. And finally, consolidate overlapping engines. Clean up the mess. And then govern your content. So rotten data, that is rot, redundant, obsolete, and trivial data, becomes truth. So if you're fixing and consolidating your search and retrieval for an agentic AI future, what should you be looking for? Well, the problem we're solving for is hallucination, and the outcome we want is secure, trustworthy reasoning and answering. 70% of enterprises stall getting from proof of concept to production because poor retrieval fuels hallucinations and those distorted answers erode trust. On the right is the checklist that turns search into an agent-ready backbone. A unified index, hybrid ranking that can normalize content and data across types and systems, airtight permissions that indexes doc-level access control lists, lightning-fast APIs at massive scale, transparent citations, and reasoning audibility. And finally, built-for-purpose analytics for admins and knowledge managers to improve answers and content gaps over time, as well as demonstrate ROI to their leadership. Nail these 6 things and hallucinations will melt away and user trust will solidify. The customer and employee experience landscape is changing rapidly. The surface area people interact with is changing, but whether it's human to human, human to AI, or AI to AI, these interactions will always depend on accurate retrieval of data to answer, make decisions, and act. The agentic AI landscape is evolving fast. New runtimes pop up regularly, each built for a purpose, each with their own strengths, constraints, and life cycle. That's why retrieval shouldn't be hardwired to the LLM, the runtime, or the data source. A single agnostic retrieval layer can ground any agent in any environment across any data source with the same trusted facts. No reindexing, no migrations, no brittle glue code every time there's a product update or protocol change. But it's one thing to say it and another to do it. So I'm going to pass you next to Vincent and LG to get practical about how you can innovate at the edge without replatforming at the core. We'll even demo an AI service agent built on our retrieval APIs. Vincent, over to you.
Thanks, Gavin, for that business context. We'll now talk about architecture before jumping in code examples and more technical examples with LG a little bit later. If you have questions throughout that presentation, please drop them in the chat. We'll make sure to answer them at the end. So in terms of technological landscape, what we see here is that these giant platforms have built some very cool agentic framework to run your code in and build some agents. The key here to select the right one is to take the one that matches your needs. So if you're in Salesforce, obviously Agentforce is a good choice. If you're in Microsoft Shop, Azure is going to be a very good selection as well. They all offer, I'd say, similar functionalities. Depending on the level of maturity of these platforms, you may opt for one or the other. One key observation here is that they have all different, I'd say, protocols or APIs, but the key lesson is that they are all text-based, JSON-based, so it's basically just a schema that defines the different tools that you're using. One observation we made by looking at them and building these agents is that you can have a single retrieval platform, in this case Coveo, that will power all of these. So no matter if you're building in one agentic framework or the other, you can have one set of information that is coherent across all these different experiences. And we think it's strongly beneficial, obviously. If you try to build these different agents, you'll see that there are different stages of maturity. You cannot start by having a set of intelligent agents that are all together speaking and be happy together. You're going to need to do these different steps to get there. The first one we see mostly in PMEs and small enterprises are basically just connecting GPT, trying to ground it with some prompts, but you know what it can do. It's obviously going to hallucinate. It's not perfect. It's a good start, but it's not grounded, and we don't think it's an enterprise solution at all. The second thing you're going to see is that you're going to ground your bot or your LLM on some information. To ground that information, you can use a vector database or a retrieval engine as sophisticated as Coveo if you want. This is the first step. You're going to have a generation machine like Coveo RGA, which you are probably aware of. The next phase is going to be to have a conversational or an agentic integration at this point. So this agentic will start to execute on itself some different tasks and will start to basically retrieve content and do a little bit more. And the last one, a search agent, is basically a fully autonomous solution that will take care of all your search needs. So it's really going to be either a standalone application for your agents that needs to search or a part of a more complex suite of applications. What we see on the market is that there are some missing strategies. Before GPT, we had these chatbots that everybody disliked that were basically scripted bots, where you had some paths that were hard-coded depending on business rules. So if you wanted to talk to support, they were listening to specific keywords and then just redirecting you to a set of predefined answers. After GPT, what we see is that we have LLM chatbots, and while they look intelligent, sometimes they are not always grounded. And this is the main thing. Even if you build a vector database, it's not going to be necessarily up to date, connected to all the different tools you have out there, not necessarily connected, not just to text retrieval, but also structured data, for instance. So what we decided to bring on the market is the gap to bridge that whole thing, which is by Coveo Relevance Generative Answering, the first stage into that maturity model. So if you want to have something that is accurate and bring good result and get a good return on investment quickly, you need to have something like this. This is a simple query that's going to give you some answers, and in the middle you're going to have the Coveo suite that's going to, at an enterprise grade, get your data in and extract all these good text chunks, and with good relevance give you back some generated answers, follow-up questions, etc. We are now evolving that solution to an agent, so an agentic RAG as we call it. So now it's the same kind of magic sauce, but now in a conversational aspect. So you're going to have, instead of having a simple query, you're going to have some long texts, some advanced queries. Then we're going to go in the middle. That search agent will resonate and do all sorts of different tasks, always sit on top of all these good documents. And then it's going to just throw back that answer, and then you're going to have the context of the whole conversation. And what we want to promote and what we see on the market that is important is basically to pipe that search agent to other agents, which is the final stage of that maturity model, where you're going to have that search agent that is going to be able to feed others. At this point, it's becoming a little bit meta, but you're going to have these bots that will talk to other bots. And then at one point, they're going to be autonomous in realizing some specific tasks for your enterprise.
Thank you, Vincent. So today I'll be showing you how we're going to build this question answering agent from scratch, starting from the basic stuff that you would need to what you would need at the end to have something that is really enterprise grade. So first, let's talk about what goes into the mix. We have some functional steps and reasoning steps. There are many steps. And to have a working agent, well, you need at least to mix these ingredients together. You cannot just take one of them and wish for the best. No, you need a lot of ingredient to have a minimum viable chatbot. In this case, here it's going to be that question answering agent. We're going to go through each of them and go into more details. So first, let's add some security check. We should not trust the user. Never trust the user input. So put in place some guardrails. You want to make sure that you're looking for anything that would be malicious. Anyone that tries to break your system, they should be stopped at this step. You might also want to put more additional guardrail, for instance, PII check. And for that, well, you might want to use another LLM, one that is not part of your vendor in the cloud, but something that is on your premises, where you will be able to look for these identifier and just block the query there so that it will never leave your premises. That's also something possible. So stay open-minded here and think about all of these steps as unique steps where you can call an LLM with a different model at each step, basically. So then comes the query analysis. Is it a question or is it just some chit-chat, small talk? Because if it's a question, well, this is where you want to do retrieval. But if it's just someone asking or just saying hello, well, and it's a greeting, well, you don't want to do retrieval in your system to reply to that. So that's why being able to categorize the query, analyze it, is really important. And then comes the query optimization. How can you look at or can take all the different signals that you have in your interface, in your system, and use them to optimize the query? Here, think about using the user context, maybe the previous the part of the conversation that is prior to that interaction, and you want to kind of blend them all together to get the best query out of what the user is typing. So basically, analyze the query, don't really trust the user query, and optimize it with an LLM. Now, we want to analyze the complexity of that question, because the complexity is going to direct you to different strategies where you can basically categorize the complexity and take different action. So imagine, what do you things that you want to be looking for basically here are is this a simple question? And by simple, we mean by a single shot of retrieval can gather the needed content to answer it. But then you have the complex question. But what is complex? And that is really different from maybe a subject to another, but from one industry to another. But here, just to keep it simple, we're going to be thinking about complex as a question that needs more than one shot of retrieval to be answered. So where you need a lot of passage, or big or complete documents, and many documents. Or it can be maybe what appears to be a simple question first, give me all of X, Y, Z. But to do that, you need to, again, retrieve a lot of passage. So it's not the question that is complex, but more the retrieval to answer it that is kind of more complex. So that's why this is really an important step of all the steps, and you don't want to be cheap on that one. And then comes the query, I should say the question decomposition. We know now the query, we've classified it as a question. we enhance that question. We know how complex it is. Now it's the time to decompose it probably into smaller questions that are in fact complementary. So here the goal is really like to kind of broaden the retrieval, to be able like to gather a lot of stuff about a lot of topic and kind of merge it all together and answer on that. Query expansion, again, something that you can add here. It's expanding the query, maybe using like thesaurus rules from your query pipeline. You can reuse that. Other strategies there, like to really, again, enhance these sub-questions to really get more data, increase the retrieval. Now comes the part that everyone is waiting, generating that response out of all the passage, query, question that we're going to be sending to the LLM. And this is where you might need to use like a stronger model at this stage because, well, you might need a bigger context window. You might need a bit of reasoning on all of that. So think again about creating like different nodes, and for each of these nodes, each of these steps, having a different model. Now that we generated an answer, we need to evaluate that answer. And first, is it like good? Is it bad? Is it missing something? Should we clarify something? So this is where comes the clarification check. So are we missing information? We need to go back to the user and ask the user to clarify. There's different strategies there that you can use. Think about maybe leveraging like facet values. So you can kind of suggest to the users values and information to clarify so that you just kind of speed up the process of clarification with the user and make it easier for him to go through that process. And then the hallucination check. Because it's a chatbot, you want it to be flexible and you want to have a conversation. And here, hallucination is kind of part of the deal, part of the mix. And hallucination can be good or it can be bad. But I would say that there's a lot of hallucination in play. It's a matter of like analyzing it and making sure that it's acceptable for the use case. And by that I mean, if you ask your chatbot, you start a conversation by just saying like, hello, you're expecting some kind of greeting back. And when the chatbot is going to answer back like, hello, well, this is not coming from your enterprise data. It's coming from the foundation model. And in a sense, because it's not from your data, it's not grounded on your data, I'll kind of classify it today as an hallucination. But you want that hallucination because it's small talk. I'm going to give you another example. If you ask your chatbot to draft a meeting plan that covers XYZ topic because you're going to be presenting like to the C-level, well, this is kind of it's going to be retrieving your content. It's going to generate the document that you ask for, but the document itself doesn't exist. So again, it's kind of an hallucination, but you want it to hallucinate in that way. So this is where you might see at some point a constellation of agents where you will have a customer service agent that is going to be talking to this retrieval agent, question answering agent, that is really specialized on question answering on your enterprise data. Then I would say like come the fun part, tracking usage analytics. Sure, like every system, you want to track interaction, you want to report on that. But what's different now? Well, sentiment analysis is something new and that we can easily integrate into the mix. So here we're going to be asking the LLM to analyze the user input during the conversation. And based on the sentiment, the analysis that we're getting there, we're going to be adapting how we want to reply back to the user. So if the user is like just neutral tone, well, we just keep it like regular response. But if we see that the customer seems like to be irritated, a bit frustrated when he's talking here, we might want to have in place some strategy where we just phrase things up to kind of calm the game. And as a real agent would do over the phone or over an email, something similar to that. So you want to adapt yourself to the users. And well, one thing that also comes in the mix, here I put it at the end of this slide, but it could have been one a bit earlier in the steps, it's like file and image analysis. So it's not just about adding some text when you're talking to the chatbot, but you also might want to upload like screenshots, error messages that you're taking screenshots of, things like that. So again, use an LLM to analyze the file, the images, and with this analysis that you're getting, just put that back in the mix when you're optimizing the queries and doing all of these steps where it makes sense to leverage the attachments that the user put in the mix. Now that we went through all of these pieces or ingredients in the mix, time to build an API. I'm going to call it here the question answering agent API. So basic stuff using fast API. I'm going to create an endpoint called agent that is going to be receiving a query and a couple of other parameters, but I want us now to focus really on the chat history parameter that I've put in. This is where we're going to be managing the memory of the chat. So why do you need a memory? I'm going to give you a small example. You open the chatbot, first interaction is asking a question about a bug that you just encountered. The LM replies back, you get an answer. You're not totally happy with that. You want to know more, so what you're going to type in, please tell me more. Can you use please tell me more to do the retrieval? Absolutely not. You need to use an LLM to optimize that query based on the previous conversation, previous questions and answers, and came up with the real question that you're asking here. And to be able to do that, well, you need to pass that past chat history. So this is why we're going to be exposing it here. So it's really important to have this type of memory in place, at least short-term memory. You need that. Long-term memory that's you kept like on the disk where you save it, that's another thing that I won't cover today, but short-term memory is absolutely needed for chatbot. Here an example how the API could respond. Here it's going to be like each of the steps that we're going through is going to be sent back. In my example, I use Swagger UI to show all of these steps that are returned. And here you see like even the sub questions and sub answers, all of it. And because I build my API using like a stream technology, each of the steps are going to come back to the user interface as soon as they're completed on the server side, so that you can build some kind of fancy animation, or you can show the chain of thought of your chatbot to easily understand the steps it's going through and how you can troubleshoot it. Here a small example of that basic API in action. So here I just mocked a community website support center, calling my chatbot, putting a question. And here you can see like different steps that we're going through. And for just the sake of the demo here, I added like some traces where you can see the processing steps, either the functional or the reasoning steps. And as you go through the different steps, it's really important to give some feedback to the user, else it's really boring and you just wait too long. Even if it's like 10 seconds of waiting, that's the feeling you get, it's too long. So that's why it's good to have like animation, loading animation for the user. And as you can see here in the demo, I'm showing all of the different steps that we're going through, so you can easily like troubleshoot all of it.
Thanks, LG. We have a lot of questions regarding what you presented, but before digging into these questions, let me show you what it looks like in real life. So this is Barca, a fictional enterprise that got the search agent for their support website. So on their support website, if you head toward the chat part, you're gonna find the search agent. This guy is handling simple questions as well as Coveo RGA. That was one of our requirements in R&D when we built it. So if we're asking a simple, straightforward question, I need to find my registration number, we're going to go through all the different stages and steps of an intelligent bot and give you the answer as fast as possible. One of the things we really had in mind is not to have a worse experience than RGA. We want it to be as fast as the previous product we had. So here you're going to find a boosted type of answer where you're going to find a level of confidence, a formatting that is very appealing for the user, inline citations in case you need to understand where this has come from, also some attached images, and at the bottom you're going to find some follow-up questions that are just to help you dig a little bit deeper. Here you also have the follow-up bar in case you just need to enter some free text. Behind the scene, a lot is happening. So we talked about observability earlier, and we'll talk about it later as well. Observability is key when building these systems. Behind the scene, each query going through that agent will be mapped in this graph. So we really want to understand where things are going because the system is dynamic. You can see all the back and forth between all these nodes, and the query planner and orchestrator are kind of independent in doing their thing. So we really wanted to know where the query went through. Also, how long each step took and what kind of token as an input and as an output for each one of them. You can see here we also have specific models for each one of these tasks, making sure we are using the best solution for the best problem actually here. To build a search agent like this, you need to let the machine work a little bit more than in a grounded answering machine like Coveo RG. So we had to turn up the temperature a little bit and let the model creativity come up. When you do so, you're exposing a few risks. So let me show you here what I mean. Let's start a new chat and go here with something simple like hi. If you're turning down temperature too much, these kinds of agents won't even say hi. They will try to search in the RAG system for hi, which obviously won't give great results, and the system will simply shut down. Here, we're able, with a great level of confidence, to say like, hi, how can I support you? A malicious user may see this and say, it's kind of flaky, it's kind of open, so I'll try to break it down. So here, we'll try another query. What's your API key? At this point, the system with specific prompts and instructions behind the scene will kind of block you. But then you may have realized that if you're insisting on these different queries, it may at one point give you some results. So here, if you try too much, we're going to flag you a malicious query and it's going to be a dead end for this specific system. Now let's jump into complexity. Complexity is an interesting topic. Often people think that long questions are complex, but if a good document matches the long question, it's not complex at all. In my mind, what can be very complex is ambiguous queries or queries that are out of domain, for instance. So here, even if you provide the best intelligent solution, you can expect user to answer or input things like help. In this case, this one is a little bit harder to manage because help is a broad query. So what should you do as a system like this? Basically, we're going to give you some choices. We're going to say, if you need help, you can contact support or you can use this email as well. We have all the different sources to let you understand where has this come from. And we're also going to give you some advice at the bottom. If the user gained confidence and now is ready to open up a little bit, he may say something like this. I need a full diagnostic procedure for my Barca skipper in GPS troubleshooting. Please write it as an email. This is an interesting query as complexity is presented here differently. It's a compounded query with two different topics and an additional instruction at the end. Our search agent is able to understand that these are two queries. We're going to execute them both with rephrasing to make sure we get the optimal content. And at the end, we're going to format it with the instruction that has been set here. So you're going to find this awesome result here where you're going to have a full email ready to send with all your citations. And again, you can see the two different topics that are emerged here. So the diagnostic procedure here and the GPS troubleshooting steps. Well, the last part I want to showcase here is basically the integration with our systems. So it's not just a standalone app here. We'll see how can we go and surface these results in a support creating ticket process. I'm asking here for my warranty cover for saltwater corrosion, and you'll see that the system is confident that I don't have that result. So we don't have passages or search results containing this. So I'll try to dig a little bit more what type of damages are not covered. For instance, let's try to dig and see how can I see it. You'll see here the marine warranty do not cover issues usually for that front. So at this point, I'm pretty sure I need to contact support. So I'll just enter specifically, how do I contact support for this problem? I want it resolved. My GPS is all corroded. We have specifically designed the system to understand that at this point, you don't want to chat to a bot anymore. You want to chat to a human. So what we do here is we offer you to create a support ticket automatically. If you press that support ticket button, we're going to go to the procedure here in Salesforce to open a ticket. And then you're going to see the summary of what happened. So the user understands the process and where he is in space-time, but also hear the full detail from the chat and the categorization of the from Case Assist, Coveo Case Assist, just to see all the different forms that are filled correctly to make sure that it is set. So if you want to build something similar to what we've shown in the demo, here are some 4 basic steps you need to respect. The first one is to get your security ready. You're going to need a lot of access between all these different systems and even across your information. So you're going to have permissions to make sure that all these agents get the right documents and making sure all these different systems have the right access if you want the whole portrait to work together. You're going to need ranking tuning. This is an important part. And if you're going straight with a vector database or I'd say some basic search engines, it's going to be quite challenging. Coveo has the full suite to make sure that you have stop words or better ranking or machine learning to make sure that the relevance layer or basically the retrieval layer has the best information to offer all the time. Observability is one of the key aspects, and I can argue enough that you need it day one. Observability will let you see what's happening between all these different processes and monitor and observe basically, because these agentic systems are basically the butterfly effect. If you just tweak a little something, the whole process can go south. So it's really important to be able to understand it. And then cost control. All these processes will consume token as the input of the output of the previous stages. So basically it compounds and builds these huge JSON blobs that will cost a lot of token if you're not looking for. To help cost control, basically the best recommendation we have is also to select the right model for the right tasks. If it's simply a classification task or something like detecting the intent, you don't need the full largest and latest model. You can take something that goes fast and cost way less. To implement and making sure that you have a right roadmap, these 4 steps will help. First off, preparation. So this one is very interesting. We often see people want to jump on the last stage of the maturity model, but basically making sure your content is good is the key. It was the same for us when we were building enterprise search. It didn't change. These are fully dependent on the quality of the content. So you need to make sure it's good. Then making sure you are provisioning all these different environments. You're going to need to have your agentic framework, your search engine ready. You're going to have a bunch of different tasks that's going to need to be scaffolded. So this is obviously a developer work, but I'd say a curious developer or a solution architect that is very technical. Going live, that's the best part. So we're recommending obviously to go live with a gradual increase of traffic, making sure that you are observing what's happening, planning it. Often these large enterprises are using some sub-markets or specific languages or localization in their systems to make sure they don't do a big bang. And last but not least, making sure that you have all your support channels set up and you have everything you need to support this whole new process. Even if there is less human on the loop, the humans, like I said earlier, will be elevated to a higher purposes of like monitoring and making sure architecting the whole thing and troubleshooting it. I'll pass it back to you, Gavin, for closing notes.
Everything you just saw was built leveraging the Coveo AI relevance platform for search and retrieval. Depending on your needs and how agentic or complex your solution should be, we have a solution. For simple needs, we have managed out-of-the-box generative answering with a plug-and-play UI or an API version of the managed answering solution you can put in your own custom interface. We also have passive retrieval for retrieving text snippets out of documents where you can manage the orchestration, prompt engineering, and UI yourself for virtually any use case. Or similarly, invoke our APIs as Agentforce actions, from passive retrieval to case classification. And finally, our APIs are available as an MCP server for easy utilization in any agentic runtime environment. So let's bring it home with 3 takeaways. First, search and retrieval is your foundation. Garbage in, garbage out. If your agents can't access fresh, permission-aware knowledge, everything else breaks. A unified, intelligent retrieval layer makes Gen AI and Agentic AI safe, fast, and accurate without forcing a migration. Second, the agentic landscape is moving fast. Different runtimes serve different needs, and the key is staying flexible. Choose a single retrieval layer that can plug into any runtime, use any protocol, and keeps your options open so you can use the best runtime for the job. That's how you innovate without replatforming. Third, match complexity to the problem. Don't bring a jet engine to fix a bicycle. A simple scoped agent that solves a real problem today builds confidence and capabilities for what's coming next. You're laying the groundwork for a multi-agent future. The message behind all of this: ground your agents in truth, stay flexible, build what matters. And if you need help doing that, Coveo's here to help. So let's talk. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you to my co-presenters, Vincent and LG. We hope you found this masterclass helpful, and we'll see you at the next one.
Are you looking to learn more and meet Coveo experts and customers live and in person? Scan the QR code on your screen now to register for our upcoming Relevance 360 events, kicking off in Chicago this August and Barcelona in September. These exclusive gatherings will help you sharpen your AI strategy, see what's working across the Coveo community, and connect with peers who are transforming their digital experiences every day. You'll walk away with a sharper game plan and a stronger network of industry leaders who are thriving with Coveo. I hope to see you there.